Good morning, students. Welcome to class 9th. Let's begin our first chapter of chemistry, that is matter in our surroundings. You have already learned about matter in your previous classes. So matter is basically anything which occupies space or have mass. In an easy word, the things which you see around you, all the things like television, refrigerator, the trees, classroom, school building, you, any human being, animals, even the air, everything is matter. And all the things which we call as matter are made up of small particles. Now, these small particles are very tiny. They are not visible to us from our naked eyes. They are so small that we cannot even see them. So these small particles comes together and forms a matter. So the definition is an easy which you have already learned in your previous classes, which is anything which occupies space and has mass is called as matter. Now, what are these particles made up of? These particles can be easily explained in simple words as atoms and molecules. About atoms and molecules, you have already learned in your previous classes, but again in this class, you will be learning them more. So in this chapter, there are not detailed version of atoms and molecules, but I can tell you that the atoms are the smallest particle or the smallest portion of any element, and the molecules are the smallest portion of any compound. So these atoms or molecules come together to form any matter. So these particles, as I said, they are very tiny and they cannot be seen from our naked eyes, but they are present in the matter which forms the matter. So there is an activity in your NCERT book, page number 1st, activity number 1.1. According to that, you have to take 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate. Potassium permanganate is a salt which is called as KMnO4. So it is a purple color crystals. So you're gonna take 2 or 3 crystals into 100 ml of water which is in the beaker. Into it, you will be also having more beakers. You will be having approximately 5 beakers, and every beaker will be having 90 ml of water. The potassium permanganate which is added into the first beaker, which is having 100 ml of water, will slowly convert change the water color into the purple color. Now then you will be adding that water, only 10 ml of water out of that 100 ml of water, into the next beaker which is having 90 ml of water. Then the second beaker is again poured into the third beaker. The 10 ml is poured into the next third 90 ml of water, and then you will keep on mixing the water from one beaker to the other beaker. After that, what we'll see that the last beaker also will have some color in that. So that color will be faded. It will not be darker like in the first beaker, but there will be some tinge of color which represent that the particles of matter are so small that they transfer from the first beaker to second to third. Even we were adding only 10 ml of water. So in that little amount of water, there were particles. So the little amount of water is able to change the color of the next 90 ml of water. That means the particles of matter are very tiny. Now this can be explained. I can explain you with a little demonstration here in the home. So please try to understand this because we can't go to the chemistry lab. So I will be trying to explain you people here. So here I've taken 4 glasses of water. Into it I will be mixing a few drops of ink. Okay, here I've mixed 2 drops of ink, and we can see that the ink is now mixing with the water. The process is very slow because the ink is dissolving in the water. All this process of dissolving the ink in the water, now ink here is also an example of the matter, and water again is a matter, although both the matter here are in liquid state. So you have learned that matter, in physical state, matter is of 3 types, that is solid, liquid and gas. So here both the type form of matter are liquid. So ink is dissolving with the water. You can see a pattern. So this ink is getting mixed into the water. That means matter or water, all the things have some space between them. So this ink is mixing in this water. So if I'll stir this, when I'll stir this water, okay, Now I will be here all the level of water are same. Only the first level of the water is higher, but the 4 glasses are having the 4 level of water, equal level of water actually. So I will be mixing little amount of water in the first glass. So I can see that the color is almost same kind of. That means now the third glass, now the fourth glass, and at the last the next glass. Now coming to the next glass, the watercolor is very light. That means that this water, which was the first glass in which I added the ink drops, it was having a dark blue or purplish color because those ink drops were having lots of particles of ink or of blue color. Since I've added little water in the second glass, so the particles traveled from this first glass to the second glass. Although I added the little quantity of water, so the color is also a little light, and in the third glass the color is again very light, but still it is imparting some color, and in the fourth glass the color is almost light, but it is still some color is there. That means this single drop of ink is able to impart the color in all the water. That means that pigments or the particles of these inks are so tiny that we cannot see in the water. They are so tiny, but still they are in there. That means particles of matter are very tiny, they are very small, that we cannot see them from our naked eyes. Now after these we will be moving to our next topic, that is characteristics of matter. Now characteristics of matter, without studying what the matter is, we cannot study the characteristics of matter. So before that we have to study about the states of matter. Now states of matter, you already know that there are 3 states of matter, that is solid, liquid and gas, which you have already learned in your previous classes. So the solid state is the state in which we can see a hard or a rigid shape. The matter which we cannot bend, or which we cannot cut from our hand, like this is a pen and this is a solid form. So this is a solid form of matter. And liquid form, all the water, all the flowy thing, water, oil, all the things are the liquid form of matter. And gases which are free, which can move around, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, all these gases are gaseous forms of matter. So all these are the states of matter, and these are the physical states of matter. That means on the basis of physical state. Okay, so remember, solid, liquid and gases are the physical states of matter, which can be classified in these 3 groups. Now what is the difference in all these states? First we'll move to solid. So in solid, this is the just an example how particles are packed in a solid form. This is the arrangement of particles. Now in solid, these are the particles. So they are tightly packed. As you can see here, all the solids are very tightly packed. They hardly have any space, but we cannot say that they don't have any space between them. They still have some space left, but it is very less space. So they cannot move from one place to the another place, because they don't have much space to move. Since they want to move, so they will be just vibrating in their own position. They will try to move, but they will not be able to move because they don't have much space. But instead they don't have any space, but still there is some space between them. So in solids, the arrangement of particle is so tightly packed that they have very less space between them. In liquid, the particles are lesser in number and they have a lot of space as compared to the solids. But still, if we'll compare liquids with the gases, the particles have little space than gases, but they have more spaces than solids. In the case of gases, the particles have lot of space between them. Now, we can see that since they don't have much space, liquids have more space and gaseous have a lot of space. So the intramolecular force of attraction, that is the attraction between one particle with the other particle. Both the particles or all these particles will attract each other due to some force, and that force of attraction which one particle tends to the other particle is called as intramolecular force of attraction. So because in the solids the particles are so tightly packed, so they will be having a lot of intramolecular force of attraction. It will be lesser in the case of liquids because they are not very tightly packed. So they will be having lesser intramolecular force of attraction, and in the case of gases they will be having very very faint, very very less intramolecular force of attraction. As here we can see that the intermolecular space is very very less. Intermolecular space means the space between one particle with the other particle. So they don't have much space. So intermolecular space is less. In the case of liquid, the intermolecular space is high. And in the case of gases, the intermolecular space is very, very far away. So they are very far away. So all these things, these are the states of matter, and this is the arrangement of particles. So all the substances which are solid have very less space between the particles. They have a very large number of attraction between the particles. They don't have much space and they are tightly packed. In liquid, they have a lot of space. They are not tightly packed. They don't have much force of attraction between the particles and they can move freely. In the case of gases, they have a lot of space. They can move freely wherever they want to be and they don't have any attraction, but they still have some attraction, but a very faint attraction between the particles. So now again we will be doing our first characteristics. Here I've written 3 characteristics. So basically you are having these 3 characteristics of particles of matter which are very important. Like again to the characteristics of particles of matter. The first characteristics of particles of matter is that particles of matter have space between them. All the matter have space between them. In this first, which we have viewed, we have read that they have a little space. They have a very little space, but still they have some space between them. So this will go with all the forms of matter, all the 3 forms of matter, that maybe it's solid or liquid or with gases. They though solids does not have much space, but they do have some space, and liquid have a lot of space, and gaseous obviously have a lot of space. So all the particles of matter, whether they are solids, liquid or gases, they have space between them. The second one is particles of matter are continuously moving. That means these particles of matter, they are continuously moving. Here in the case of solid, we will not be able to find that they are moving since they don't have much space. So they will be moving, but they will not be able to move properly because they don't have much space, but they will vibrate at their own positions. So we will consider them as moving. In the case of liquids, they are moving. That is why water and all the liquids are so runny. And the gases, obviously they are moving, so gases are free to move anywhere, and gases can be spread from any place to the other place as well. Next is particles of matter attract each other. All these particles have some sort of attraction to each other. The attraction is very high in the case of solids, it is less in the case of liquids, and it is very very less in the case of gas. But all the particles of all the form of matter attract each other. All these can be explained to you by simple example. Like if we'll take a glass of water. Wait a minute. Where's the glass of water? Do this with a little experiment here once again. If you'll take a glass of water and to it, if you'll mix a little salt in the water, so after stirring for a while, you can do at your home also. Since I'm making this video, I will not be able to mix it properly for this little time. So you can do it at your home, and when you'll see the water, then it will be very very clear. So that water will be dissolved, that salt will be dissolved in the water, and it will not be visible anymore. So salt here is a example of a solid matter, and liquid is obviously water is the example of liquid form of matter. So that solid form of matter is dissolved in the liquid matter, where it hides then, where it gets dissolved, why it is not visible anymore. So actually the salt particles are very tiny. Still salt is in a solid form, but as we have said that, we have read that matter is made up of small particles. So the particles of salt will be dissolved in the water, and they will be hiding in the intermolecular space which is between the particles of water. So that particle of salt will hide in the intermolecular space which is present in the water or the particles of water, so they are not visible. So that is why if you will mix 50 grams of sugar into 100 ml of water, the volume of water will not rise up because it will get fitted into the space between the water particles of water. So this is an example of the first point, that is particles of matter have space between them. The other one is particles of matter are continuously moving. So if you'll burn any innocent sticks or any dhupatti or agarbatti, what you'll see is that the little fumes comes from that and then they move all through the room, and after some time you will be smelling a good fragrance from that. That means your mother or your father are doing puja in any room, or if you want to go to a party, you spray a perfume to your body or to your clothes. Then what happens, the other person who is sitting next to the room can also smell that fragrance, because the particles of gases or the particles of any form of matter are always moving, but they are having a very very high pace of movement in the case of gases, but very very lesser in the case of solid, but still they are moving. Then the third one is particles of matter attract each other. So whenever you have any solid matter, like this is a marker and this is a solid form of matter, so I will try to bend it. Okay, it is not bending, so it is attracting each other. So if I'll take water and I will try to cut it with my hand, so since water is very very particles are attracting each other, so I will not be able to cut it, but still I can move my finger in the water easily, because in the case of liquids, the particles have little space, so the attraction is also little lesser. But in the case of solid, the attraction is very very high, and in the case of liquids, attraction is very little low. That is why I can move my hand in the water, though I cannot cut the water, but I can move my hand easily. But in the case of solid, I cannot move my hand into this marker. And in the case of gases, like this is an air. So air is a mixture of gases, and I can move my hand easily you can easily move your hand in the air. So I can cut the air very easily, because in the case of gases, the particles are very very far away from each other, so they will be having attraction, but a very very lesser attraction. So these are the points, or these are the characteristics which explains us about the nature of the particle of matter, because matter is made up of particles, and these are the characteristics of particles of matter, that how do these particles behave. So these particles of matter have space between them, the particles of matter are continuously moving, and the particles of matter attract each other. So these are the points which are very important. You have to make notes. You can take the screenshot of this video and you can form your notes. Now moving to the next topic, which is characteristics of the physical states of matter, that is solid, liquid and gases. So these solids, liquids and gases, you already know about these. Here I have written some properties such as shape and volume, compressibility, density, rigidity, fluidity, intramolecular force of attraction, intermolecular space, melting point, boiling point and diffusion. Before moving to before telling you all these properties, I would like to explain you few of these points which you have not read earlier, so that it will be clear for you people. So here I go. First one is rigidity. Now rigidity is a word which stands for rigid. Rigid means very very hard, which a thing which is very very hard, or it is not at all flexible. Like this is a spoon, so this spoon is very very hard, it is not flexible. So any substance which is very very hard or which is not flexible at all is called as rigid. So a substance which is hard and inflexible is called as rigid. The property of being rigid is called rigidity, and rigidity is very very high in the case of solids. So solids have very high rigidity. Rigidity means the property of any substance being hard and inflexible. Okay, so I think this is clear. Now next is fluidity. Anything, a material which can flow easily are called fluids. So all those materials which are in the running consistency, which are flowing, which can move from any place to anywhere, which don't have any shape or size, which are free to move anywhere, are considered as fluid. Example, gases and liquids. Since gases does not have any shape, any size, they are just free to move anywhere. The particles are free to move anywhere, and same in the case of liquids also. They don't have any specific shape and size, so they are moving wherever they have space to go. If a liquid is spilled on the ground, it will take all the surface, it will cover all the surface, so they are called as fluid. So the characteristics of liquids and gases of flowing easily is called as fluidity. Now the other one is diffusion. This word diffusion is just a simple example of spraying a perfume bottle in your room, and you can smell the fragrance all throughout the house. Or if your mother cooks delicious food, then you can smell the fragrance or the good smell of the food while sitting in your room, because the air is diffusing. The air is moving from one place to the another. So the movement of the particles from its higher concentration to its lower concentration is called as diffusion. The place where the food is being cooked, the place where there is a lot of molecules of gases in which there is fragrance, that place is considered as the higher concentration. That means where there is a maximum amount of that substance is considered as higher concentration, and the place where there is lesser number or no number is called as lower concentration. So the gas molecules will move from the higher concentration to their lower concentration. That is why they will be covering the whole area where they are not. So the spreading out and mixing of a substance with another substance due to the motion of its particles, because particles are moving, all the things depends upon the particles. And in the beginning of the chapter, I've told you that matter is a thing which occupies space and has mass, and matter is made up of small particles called atom, and these particles are so tiny that we will not be able to see them from our naked eyes. So those particles will move from one place to the another and will mix with the another substances is called as diffusion. Like I've added few drops of liquid of ink into the water, and then we saw that the ink was mixing with the water. That means it was also an example of diffusion. So diffusion takes place in all the medium, be it solid, be it liquid, or be it gaseous. But diffusion is higher in the case of gases, it is lesser in the case of liquid, and it is very, very less in the case of solids. But solids do show diffusion. The next is kinetic energy. This is the energy which is possessed by any material due to the movement of the motion of the particles. Now these particles are continuously moving, which we have read just now, that the particles of matter are always moving. So the movement of the particles will be higher in the cases of gases. So the kinetic energy in the gases will be very high. Since the particles will move, so they will possess the kinetic energy, and this energy will allow this particle to move more higher and more faster. That is why gases travel faster than any other medium of matter. So the energy which is possessed means the particles, when they move from one place to the another place, they possess a sort of energy, and that energy is called as kinetic energy. Now the next is compressibility. The compressibility is a property of compressing or of pressing or decreasing the volume or size of any substance. Like if you take a cotton ball or a sponge in your hand, you are able to compress it. If you try to put it in your fist, you will be able to keep it in your fist, and when you open your fist again, the sponge or a cotton ball will regain its size. That means cotton ball, the fibers of cotton or in the sponge, there is a fluffy substance which is regaining its size, and it is filled with the air. So now another example of compressibility, it is in your NCERT book. So you have to go through your NCERT book. I have covered the page number, I've covered till page number 5. So this video is made till covering the page number 5. So you will have to go through your NCERT books, and you will read all the activities which are given in your book thoroughly, and you have to read one by word all the words of your NCERT book. Also, you will try to find out the question and answers of your NCERT book. I will be making the solutions of those question and answers in the next video. So about the activity, you will have to take 3 syringes. Syringe means injections. So you will remove the needle of the syringe, and you will keep the mouth of the syringe in a rubber. Then you will fill the syringe with water. One syringe will filled with water. The other syringe will fill with any salt or any sand. Salt would be better because it is available at home. And the third syringe will be kept empty. So try to or keep all the syringe mouth on the rubber, and then you will be applying a pressure. I can show you the activity in your book. Like, this is the syringe, and you will be filling this syringe with one syringe with salt, the other syringe with water, and the third syringe with it will be empty. So when it's empty syringe, that means there is gas, and the mouth of the syringe will be tucked in the rubber here like this. So when you will compress this this piston, the syringe in which there is salt, you will not be able to compress till the level of salt, and the second one in which there is water, you will again not be able to compress the piston of the syringe. But the third syringe in which there will be gas, you will be able to compress the piston of the syringe completely. That means solids are not compressible at all, liquids are also not compressible, but gases are compressible to a very higher extent. The last one is density. Density is just a mass per unit volume of a material is called as density. So any substance has mass, and it has weight also. So that weight, which is per unit volume to the mass, is called as density. That means density equals to m upon v. Now again, moving to the properties which we were going through. So now, as you've understood these little properties, so we can go through the points. Okay, first moving to the shape and volume. So now, shape of solids are, they have fixed shape and fixed volume. This is very, very clear that they have fixed shape and fixed volume. Liquids do not have any fixed shape, but they have fixed volume because liquids take the shape of their container. Gaseous neither have fixed space nor they have any fixed volume. Next is compressibility. Just we have read that compressibility is the property to be compressed, or the property, the volume to be decreased. So solids cannot be compressed at all. Liquids cannot be compressed, but gases can be compressed easily. And this is how we can compress the gas. You have seen your LPG cylinder. You have seen. So when the cylinder is very new, you can feel that there is a water in the new cylinder. But when you feel that your mother says that gas has gone, the cylinder is empty, you see that there is no liquid inside the cylinder. That means that liquid is the gas. It is called as LPG. The name suggests by itself is liquid petroleum gas. That gas which is obtained from the fractional distillation of petrol, the gas is compressed to an extent that these gas molecules, these gas particles, which is very, very far away from each other, they are compressed and they are come so closer that they the particles behave like this. So particles are compressed and they are allowed to move so close to each other. That means they comes like this. The arrangement becomes like this. So since this is the arrangement of liquid, so they behave as liquids. So gases are compressed and they can behave as liquids. So density again, solids, because they have a lot of particles in a small space. So because particles have mass, so the particles, because there are a lot of particles in a particular space, so they will always have a high density. Liquids will have moderate density, little low, little high, moderate density, average density, and gases will have very low density. Then rigidity. Rigidity is a property of being very hard and unflexible or inflexible. So solids obviously will be having very high rigidity. Liquids will be having very, very less or no rigidity. They are not rigid at all, and gases will be not rigid at all. Fluidity. Solids are not fluid at all. They are very solid, so they don't flow. Liquids flow easily and gases flow easily. Then intramolecular force of attraction. Solids have a very high intramolecular force of attraction because the particles attract each other with a very great force. liquid have lesser intramolecular force of attraction and gases have very less intramolecular force of attraction. Since the particles are very far from each other, so they will have very lesser force of attraction. Intermolecular space, the space between each particle is very less, we can see here, and liquid have a lot of space and gases have a lot of space. So intermolecular very less, liquid have less, and gases have very high space. Melting point and boiling point, still solid, liquid and gases, the particles arrangement is different, so they will be having different melting and boiling point. Solids have very tightly packed arrangement of particles, so it is not easy to move these particles from one place to the another. When the particles are moved, they will be behaving like this. That is, this is a liquid state of matter, so it will take a lot of kinetic energy, a lot of energy to give the solid so that they can behave like liquids. So they have a high boiling and melting point. Liquids have less melting and less boiling point, and gases have very low melting and boiling point. The last one is diffusion. Gases diffuse it at a very high speed, and this liquids diffuses at a high speed, but solid very slow diffusion. So example of diffusion of solids, that when you come to your school, you have seen that teacher writes something on blackboard, and when you go home and there is a holiday for 2 or 3 days, after, when if the board is not rubbed, it is not cleaned, and the next day when you come after 2 or 3 days holidays, then you try to rub the blackboard, you are not able to rub the chalk properly from the blackboard. Still some stains, something is seen on the blackboard, some traces are seen on the blackboard. That means the particles of chalk diffuses into the blackboard. That means diffusion means the particles of chalk diffuses into the blackboard. Another example of diffusion would be your mother keeps naphthalene balls in the almirah with the clothes. Then after a year, when you take out the clothes again to wear in the woolen in the winter season, you see that the size of the naphthalene ball decreases. So that means the decrease of the size of the naphthalene ball is due to the diffusion. Since the diffusion in solid is very slow, so it takes a lot of time to diffuses, but in the case of liquids and gases, the diffusion is quite high. So all these points which I've covered you in the today's video are done. You have to go through this. You can take the screenshot of this and you can make the chart. This is very helpful for your people. Go through all the topics which I've covered today, and the topics are really important. You have to study them, and to find the homework, I've written the homework in the assignment portion in the Ursel software as well. So please check the homework. In that there is a worksheet, so you will be doing all the question and answers, and I will be discussing the solution with the answer in the next video. So please study hard and stay safe till the next video comes.